She was standing at the gate when he came out of the house that morning, and the first thing he noticed was that she was alone, not waiting with horses behind her, not watching the road for others. Alone the way a stone is alone in a field. Not placed there, just arrived. She was very tall. She did not move when she saw him. "I have no clan," she said. What happened next would outlast the season. His name was Harlan. He had come to this piece of land 6 years ago, with his wife and 3 children and not much else. And in the years since, the land had given him 2 more children and taken his wife. And he had stayed. That was the whole of the story. He rose before the sun each morning. He did not make 2 cups of coffee anymore, just the one. The second chair at the table was where his oldest had started keeping her things, her coat, her books, whatever she was carrying in from outside. Nobody had moved it there on purpose. It had just settled into that use, the way things do when there is no one left to argue about it. He was not a large man, compact and deliberate, the way men get who have spent years at hard work in bad weather. He moved without waste. He spoke the same way. The homestead was 40 acres of mostly rock and thin soil, the kind of land that asked more than it gave back. 2 fields, 1 working, and 1 that had not been broken yet. A barn that leaned slightly to the east. A fence line that needed new posts in 4 places, maybe 6. The house itself was sound enough. It was the roof that was the problem. He had known about the roof since the first real rain after they arrived. It leaked in the northwest corner of the main room, where 2 boards had warped and pulled apart. He had patched it twice. Twice it had come back. There was a bucket in that corner now, a dark stain on the ceiling boards above it, and a sound he had learned to sleep through. The tap of water on the tin bottom in the deep part of the night. He did not have the lumber to fix it properly. He did not have a second pair of hands for the work, not without pulling one of the children off what they were doing. He had made a note in his head that said, "Soon." He had been making that note for 2 years. There were 5 of them. The oldest was Dara, 14, who ran the house in the mornings before he came back in from the first round of chores. She did it without being asked, and without complaint, and with a steadiness that made him forget, sometimes, how young she was. She had her mother's way of standing with her arms crossed when something was going wrong, and nobody was saying so. Then Finn, 12 and broad in the shoulders, who could carry what 2 of the others could not. Mera, who was 9, and read whatever she could get her hands on, including the backs of flour sacks. Tomas, 7, who mostly followed Finn and called it helping, and Pip, the youngest, 4 years old, who had not yet learned that not every thought in his head needed to come out of his mouth. They were loud and hungry and underfoot, and they were his. He managed them the way he managed everything else, 1 thing at a time. That evening he walked the fence line. The gate was the last thing he checked. It dragged on the left side, catching the ground when he closed it. He noted it. He came inside. The roof was quiet for a while. Then it dripped. Once, a clean tap against the tin bottom of the bucket. Then again, an hour later. He moved the bucket 2 inches. He went to bed. He had done this every night for 2 years. It did not take him long. He did not think about it anymore. In the morning, someone was at the gate. He was up before 4, checked the bucket first. There was a 1/4 inch of water in the bottom, not enough to matter yet. He poured it out and set it back. Then the fire, then water for washing. He had the bread cut and the coffee on by the time the first sounds came from upstairs. Feet on the floor. The thump of Thomas landing wrong, getting out of his bunk, which happened most mornings. Pip came down first. He crossed the kitchen in his socks with his hair standing up on one side and said, "Is the floor cold?" "Yes," Harlan said. Pip looked at the floor. Then he walked across it anyway. The door didn't latch right in cold weather, and it had been cold for 3 weeks. Dara came down last and took over the rest of breakfast without being asked. She knew what was left to do. She had been doing it long enough. Harlan poured his coffee and stayed out of her way. Finn ate, standing up, because there was not room for all of them at the table at once. He finished first and went out to the animals. Mira came to breakfast with a folded piece of paper she had found somewhere and read it through the meal. She turned it over and read the back. "What does it say?" Pip said. "Nothing for you," Mira said. "Tell me anyway." She didn't. Thomas told a story a neighbor boy had told him, something about a horse that could count. The story had no real ending. Nobody asked for one. After the children were out, Harlan washed the plates. Standing at the basin, his thumb found the button in his jacket pocket. He always forgot it was there until he found it. A brass button from his service coat, the kind with a small raised pattern on the face that had worn flat over the years until you had to hold it in a certain light to see it. Round and smooth and lighter than it looked. He had been carrying it for 7 years. He dried his hands and held it a moment, then put it back. He did not know exactly why he still carried it. He had not thought about it in a while. He went up to look at the roof. The 2 boards he had patched the second time had lifted at one end, the nails backing out because the wood had nothing left to hold them. There was a third board he had not noticed before, soft in the middle, which meant the whole section needed replacing, not patching. He sat on the edge of the roof and looked at it for a while. He needed lumber. He needed half a day with nothing else pulling at him. He needed a second pair of hands. He had none of those things and no prospect of them. He climbed back down. He moved the bucket 2 inches. He left the ladder against the wall. He walked the fence line late in the day. The posts in the east section were worse than the west. 2 of them moved when he put his hand on them, which they should not have done. He made a note. He would need to dig those posts out and reset them, which meant a day he did not have. The gate was the last thing. It dragged on the left side the same as always. He lifted it when he pulled it closed and the latch caught. He stood with his hand on the latch. The road was empty. Just the road and the last of the light going off it, and the trees at the edge of what he could see. He stood there for a moment. Then he went inside. He came out of the house before full light, and she was at the gate. He stopped on the porch step. She was very tall, taller than any person he had seen come to this road. She stood with her hands at her sides and was not holding anything. No horse behind her, no one with her, nothing on the road in either direction. Just the gate and her stillness and the early light going grey at the edge of the field. He did not call back into the house. He went down the steps and walked toward her. He stopped at the gate. She did not move. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and neither of them said anything for a while. A crow called once from back in the trees and went quiet. The field sat still. The light was just starting to come. The front door opened behind him. He knew without turning that it was Dara from the weight of the step. "Stay there," he said. He did not say it loudly. She stopped. The others came to the doorway behind her. He could hear them without turning to look. Pip said something, too low to catch. Dara shushed him. Then it was quiet again. The woman at the gate had not moved through any of it. She had watched everything and moved nothing. He put his hand on the latch. "What do you need?" he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said it plainly. She had no clan, There was nothing behind her on that road. She was not asking to stay. She was asking not to be turned away. He let that sit. "Where are you from?" he said. "Far enough," she said. "It does not matter now." He looked at her hands, at the road behind her, at the tree line on either side. Nothing. She had been telling the truth before she opened her mouth. "What do they call you?" he said. "Rua," she said. He had not reached for the rifle. He had not looked past her down the road for others. He had not done either of those things. She was standing the way people stand when they have nothing left to lose. He knew that posture. He had worn it himself once. It was not a comfortable place to stand, but it was one he recognized. What was on his face was not trust. Not yet. Not pity either. Not charity. More like the recognition of a country he had been through himself. He knew what it looked like when everything behind a person had run out. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he lifted the latch and pulled the gate open. Not wide. Just enough. He did not explain himself. He did not look back at the house. "You can sleep in the barn tonight," he said. She did not thank him. She stepped through and stopped on the other side, and waited, which was the right thing to do. He pulled the gate closed. The latch caught. He walked back toward the house. She followed 2 steps behind. Pip had come off the porch and was standing in the yard, staring at her. He was not afraid. Not exactly. He just stood there, with his mouth a little open. Dara was on the porch with her arms crossed. She watched Rua walk past and said nothing. Harlan showed her the barn. He pointed to what mattered. She nodded at each thing. He went back to the house. Pip was at the table. Dara was in the kitchen doorway. "Who is she?" Dara said. "Someone who needed a place to sleep," he said. Dara looked at him for a moment. Then she went back to what she was doing. He went to the barn at first light. She was awake. She was sitting upright against the back wall of the loft, the way someone sits when they have not slept and are not pretending otherwise. The blanket he had left was folded beside her. The water bucket was where he had set it. She had not moved anything. He set a cup of water and a piece of bread on the floor inside the door. He did not speak. He did not go further in. He went back to the house. Dara found him at the woodpile before the others were up. He heard her coming and did not stop splitting. He set the halves on the pile and stood up another round. "How long is she staying?" Dara said. "I don't know." "You didn't ask us." He split the round. "No, I didn't." Dara was quiet for a moment. "What if she's dangerous?" "If she were dangerous," he said, "she wouldn't have asked." Dara looked at him the way she looked at him when she thought he had decided something wrong and knew she had no say in it. She was 14, and she had her mother's way of holding the silence after a thing had been said. He knew the look. He waited it out. She went back inside without saying anything else. Rua spent most of the morning on the property. She was not exploring. He could tell the difference. She walked the east fence line slowly, pressing the soft posts with her palm to feel how much they moved. She looked at the lean in the barn wall. She stood in the yard and looked at the roof for a long time, without going up to it or touching anything. When Harlan crossed the yard to the shed, she stepped aside and waited for him to pass. Not out of deference, just patience. He went by without speaking. When he looked back from the shed doorway, she was still in the same place, eyes on the roof, not moving. He found her at the fence line at dusk. Pip was on the porch steps, watching. He told her the terms. She could stay in the barn. She ate with the household when there was enough. She did not come inside without being asked. She did not leave the property without telling him first. She nodded at the first 3. At the 4th, she said, "Understood," He started to turn. "The roof," she said. He turned back. "I can fix it," she said. "The northwest section. I can see what needs to come out." He looked at her. "You've done that kind of work?" "Yes." "Roof work? Specifically?" "Yes. And I am not going to fall through it." He didn't say anything for a moment. He looked at the roof. The stain on the ceiling boards was invisible from out here, but he knew where it was. She waited. "The boards underneath may need to come out too," he said. "Not just the surface." "I know," she said. "That is usually how it is." He did not say yes. He turned and walked to the small shed beside the barn. He opened the door and looked at what was in there. 2 planks and some shorter pieces, none of them the right width. He would need to get more. He came back out. Rua was where he had left her. "I'll get the lumber," he said. "This week." She nodded. That was the whole of it. Pip was still on the steps. He had been there the entire time. "Is she staying?" Pip said. "For now," Harlan said. Pip thought about that. "She's very tall," he said. "Yes," Harlan said. "She is." Pip nodded, as if that settled something. He stayed on the steps while Harlan went inside. Harlan came out before first light and found her already at the east fence line, not walking it for pleasure. She had her hands on the soft posts, the ones he had noted 2 days ago, and she was pressing each one in sequence to feel how much it moved. She had a stick she was using to mark them. She had not fixed any of them. She was waiting. When he crossed the yard, she looked up. She walked him down the line. She pressed the 4th post and the 5th and showed him with her palm how far they moved. He looked. He nodded. He said he would get to those posts by the end of the week. She pulled the marking stick out of the ground and set it against the fence. On the 2nd day, the lumber came. He had gone early, before the children were up, and borrowed the cart from a neighbor 2 miles out. He came back with 3 boards of the right width and a 4th that would do for the short run. Rua was in the yard when he pulled in. She looked at the boards and did not wait for him to ask. She took the first board from the cart and carried it across the yard to the barn and set it against the wall and came back. He let her. Finn had come out for the animals and stopped when he saw the cart. He said nothing. He just stood and watched Rua lift the 3rd board, which was the long one, and carry it the length of the yard without slowing. Mira had come to the window. Tomas came out at some point and stood near Finn. Dara did not come out. On the 3rd day, they went up. He had the tools laid out before she came from the barn. She looked at the arrangement and picked up the pry bar, and they climbed. The northwest section was worse than it had looked from the yard. 3 boards with rot in them, and a run of framing underneath that had gone soft. She pried the first board up and handed it down to him, and he passed it over the edge. She moved to the next one. They did not talk much. She worked quickly and without wasted motion, the kind of work that comes from having done it before. He matched her pace. When she stopped to look at something, she took her time, and he waited. She was not wrong about what she was looking for. Below, the ordinary sounds of the day went on, the gate dragging when Finn opened it. Dara's voice at some point, and then Pip's. The animals, the field quiet in the mid-morning light. When they came down, the bucket was still in the corner. The ceiling above it was open to sky. Tomorrow. Pip was in the yard with a cup. He had carried it from the house with both hands, watching the water level the way children do when they do not want to spill. He stopped in front of Rua and held it up. She took it with both hands. She drank and handed it back. It was not gratitude, exactly, and not performance. She drank and gave the cup back, and that was the whole of it. Pip stood there a moment longer. He looked at her hands where they had held the cup. Then he went back inside. That evening, Harlan came around the side of the barn and found something on the step near the door, a piece of smoked meat wrapped in cloth, set there without ceremony. He had not put it there. Rua was inside the barn. He left it where it was. Later, Pip found it. He crouched down and looked at it very closely, then looked up at Harlan. "Is that safe?" Pip said. "I don't know," Harlan said. Pip looked at the meat. He looked at the barn door. He looked at the meat again. He did not eat it. He stood up and went inside. The bucket stayed in the corner, but the ceiling above it was bare framing now, open work, the old rot gone. Tomorrow they would close it. The roof held. He knew it before he checked, but he went up anyway, the morning after Rua nailed the last board. He walked the northwest section and pressed his palm against each joint. Solid. The framing had taken the new boards clean. He came down. He went to the corner of the main room where the bucket had been. It was dry. The stain on the ceiling boards was still there, same shape as before, but dry. He took the bucket to the shed and set it on the shelf. That night it rained. He lay in bed and listened to it come off the roof and run down the walls. He listened for the tap in the corner. It did not come. He stayed awake a while, not from worry, just listening to the sound of rain with something solid between him and it. Then he slept. The fence took 2 more days. He and Rua worked the east section first, the posts she had marked on the first morning. They dug each one out with the iron bar and set new posts in tamped earth. Tomas and Mira hauled posts from the pile near the barn without being asked. They saw what was needed. The west section ran longer. Finn took the far end of the line, while Harlan and Rua worked the middle. By the afternoon of the second day, the fence ran straight along the east field, which it had not done in 3 years. Harlan stood at the end of it and looked at it. Then he went back to work. The seeds went in the week after. The far corner of the south field had not been broken right, and he had needed a second pair of hands to do it properly. Now he had them. They turned the section in a morning. Rua with the mattock, Harlan behind with the plough blade, Mira and Thomas dropping seeds in the opened rows, while Pip walked behind and filled in gaps he may or may not have been making on purpose. By midday the section was planted. The turned earth was dark and even. He stood at the edge of it and felt the sun on his back. 3 days into the second week, Thomas stopped Rua at the barn door and asked her how roof nails worked, why they had to go in at an angle. She looked at him. She told him plainly, in a few sentences. Thomas nodded. He stood there a moment, as if he might have another question. He did not. He went back to what he was doing. The next morning, Mira asked her something about the fence post depth, and got the same kind of answer. Neither of them made a ceremony of it. Near the end of the second week, all 7 of them sat down to supper together for the first time. No one had planned it. Rua came to the door in the evening, and Harlan said, "Come in." There was no good place for her to stand while the plates were being set out, so she sat at the end of the table. The children arranged themselves the way they always did. Harlan sat across from her. There was not quite enough food. There often was not. Nobody said anything about it. Dara passed the bread without being asked. The plate went around the table and reached Rua last. Dara did not look at her when she passed it. She looked at the bread. Nobody remarked on that either. The meal was ordinary. Toman said something, and Finn told him he was wrong, and Mira said he was half right. Pip ate with his hands. Harlan told him to use the fork. Pip picked it up and looked at it, and put it back down. Rua ate. She did not speak, and she did not take more than her share. When the meal was done, Dara stood and cleared the plates around the table. She came to Rua's plate and took it the same as the others, without looking at her, and brought it to the basin. Harlan watched. He did not say anything. The children went to bed the way they always did, in stages. Pip first, announcing it. Mira took a little longer, the way she did when she had been reading and lost track of the hour. Finn stayed up past when he should have, and said nothing about it. Dara was last, the way she was most nights, and she passed the fire without stopping and went up the stairs without saying good night. This too was usual. Harlan sat by the fire. The barn door was open. He could see the lamp she had burning, the rectangle of it yellow and small in the dark of the yard. He watched it for a while without making anything of it. Then he got up and went out. He crossed the yard and stood in the barn doorway. She was awake. She had the lamp on a flat stone beside her, and she was looking at something in her hand. She looked up when he came to the door. He sat down on a feed barrel near the entrance. Behind him, the house fire was still going. The barn was cold. He did not say anything for a while. Then he said that his wife had died in the 3rd winter. A fever. She had been sick for a long time first, the kind of sick that a person learns to live around, and then one year it stopped being that kind. He had known it was coming. He had thought knowing it would help. It had not helped. The year after that was the one he did not like to think about. He had the children and the land and not much else, and he had gotten through it the way you get through things, one morning at a time. He said all this looking at the lamp. He did not look at her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, her clan was gone. Not gone the way a person is gone. Gone the way a place is gone, when enough time passes and enough things happen to it that you stop being able to find it again. There had been fighting. Her people had scattered. She had gone back twice and found no one who stayed. The 3rd time she had not gone back. She had been going in one direction since then, because there was no direction that felt like anything else. That was all she said about it. He sat with it. What was between them after that was not sympathy, not solidarity. More like the recognition that the shape of the whole was the same, even if the thing that had made it was different. He knew the weight of something that used to be a place and was now only a fact. She knew it too. You could tell by how she held the knowing, the way you can tell when someone has been carrying a thing long enough that they have stopped feeling its edges. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the brass button. He held it in his open palm. The raised pattern had worn almost flat. It was lighter than it looked. He did not offer it to her. He just held it there. She watched him. Then she reached into the cloth beside her and took something out. A small piece of carved stone, the edges worn smooth, whatever had been carved into it nearly gone. She held it the way he was holding the button. They sat like that for a while. The lamp burned. Outside, the night was still. After a while, she put the stone away. He put the button back in his pocket. He got up and went back to the house. In the morning, Dara was already at the fire when he came downstairs. "Where were you last night?" she said. Not with an edge. She said it the way she asked about things she had noticed and wanted to account for. "Outside," he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she turned back to the fire and went on with breakfast. She did not ask anything else. He saw the rider from the south field. One horse, coming at a walk. Nobody behind him. He held a pace that was not urgent. Harlan watched him come until it was clear the man was heading for the gate, then walked in from the field to meet him. The man was county, which you could tell from the coat and the way he sat the horse. He said his name was Aldred. He said he was from the county welfare office and that a report had been filed about the children on this property. He was here to look at the situation and write up what he found. He said it politely. He was not hostile. Harlan opened the gate and let him in. Aldred looked at the homestead, the way men in his position look at things, which is to say, he looked at everything and wrote nothing down yet. The fence running straight along the east field, the roof, the turned earth in the south corner, the barn. He spent a moment on each thing. Then he opened his book. Harlan answered what he was asked. How many children, their names and ages, how long he had been on the land, whether the children were being schooled. Harlan said that Dara handled the younger ones in the mornings, which was true. Aldred wrote things down. He asked about the arrangement for winter, whether there was fuel laid in, whether the children had what they needed for the cold months. Harlan answered each question. He was asking about food when Rua came around the side of the house. She had been at the woodpile and did not know there was anyone in the yard until she was already in view. She stopped. She had an armload of split wood. She set it down slowly. Aldred stopped writing. He looked at Rua. He looked at Harlan. His pen did not move. "That is Rua," Harlan said. "She works the property." That was all he said about it. Aldred looked at her for another moment, then looked back at his book. All 5 children came to the doorway, sometime in the next few minutes, without being called. Dara stood at the front of them. The others ranged behind her, the 2 smaller ones angling around her to see. Aldred looked at them for a long time. He counted, which was visible. Then he walked to the house and spoke to Dara directly. He asked her how old she was and whether the children were getting on all right. She answered Aldred's questions one at a time, looking at him directly. She did not look at Rua. She did not look at Harlan. Her voice was even. The answers were straightforward, and she gave them that way, Aldred wrote in his book. He stood at the edge of the south field for a moment and looked at the turned earth. He looked at the roof. He walked the length of the new fence without pressing any of the posts. He wrote something more. He said he would need to file a report with the county office. He said it the way people say things they are required to say, without telling you what the report would contain. He paused. He looked at Rua one more time, a long look, the kind a man gives something he is trying to place and has not yet found the right column for. Then he went to his horse. He rode out without looking back. Harlan watched him go. Rua stood a few feet to his right. Neither of them spoke. After a moment, Dara came down the porch steps and stood on Harlan's other side. She said nothing. She watched the road until the rider was out of sight. Then she went back inside. There were 4 of them. He saw the horses from the porch in the early grey before the children were up. 4 riders, coming from the north road at a pace that was not social. He knew the difference. He went inside. He told the children to stay in the house and keep the door. He told it plainly, not loud. Dara looked at him. She did not ask. When he came back out, Rua was already at the barn door. She had seen them too. She stood with her hand on the frame and watched the road. He went to the gate and waited. The man at the front was broad and rode a tall horse and had the look of someone who owned things and expected that to carry weight in any room he entered. He stopped his horse at the gate and did not dismount. "My name is Creel," he said. "I'm known in this county. I'm here about the creature you've got living in your barn." He used the word creature the way a man uses a word when he has decided in advance it is the right one and does not intend to argue about it. Harlan said nothing. Creel said it had come to the attention of a number of people in the county that there was an orc on this property. He said the county welfare man had confirmed it in his report. He said that a property with 5 children and an orc on it was not something the community could overlook. He had a paper with him, he said. Names on it. People who agreed with him that this was a situation requiring resolution. He said the orc needed to go. He said it in the way of a man who expects that saying a thing clearly is the same as having it done. Harlan looked at him. He looked at the 3 men behind him. He looked at Creel. "This is my land," Harlan said. "The people on it are here at my word. That is the beginning and the end of it." Creel said that was not the end of it. He said there was a paper with 30 names on it. He said the county welfare office had documented the situation. He said a man with 5 children living in this arrangement had responsibilities that extended beyond what he might personally prefer. He was watching Harlan's face the whole time. He seemed to be waiting for the face to change. It did not change. Harlan did not answer. He looked at Creel and said nothing, and let the silence sit where it was. After a moment, Creel said something about the county council and what could be done through official channels if the matter was not resolved. He was still watching Harlan's face when he said it. The front door of the house opened. Harlan did not turn to look. All 5 children came and stood in the doorway. He knew without looking. Dara first, then the others ranging behind her. He had told them to stay inside. They had not. He did not send them back. Creel looked at the house. He looked at the doorway. He looked at the children, and then he looked at Harlan. Something shifted in the way he was holding himself, though his expression did not change. He opened his mouth to speak. Rua stepped out of the barn. She did not come toward the gate. She walked to the center of the yard and stopped there and stood still, the way she always stood when she was waiting for something to be decided. Her hands were at her sides. She did not speak. Creel went quiet. He looked at her for a long moment. He looked at the children in the doorway. He looked at Harlan at the gate. Then he said he would be back. He said it the way men say things when they haven't gotten what they came for, but are not ready to admit it. He pulled the horse around, and the others followed him out. He said he would be back. He probably would. They came back in 2 days. More horses this time. 6 of them, spread across the road in a way that was meant to read as authority. Harlan was at the gate when they came around the bend. He was just there, the way he was at the gate most mornings, one hand on the post, looking at the road. Creel was at the front again. The barn door opened before Creel's horse stopped. Rua came across the yard without hurrying and took a position a few feet to Harlan's right and stood still. She did not look at him. She looked at the gate. Then the house door opened. Dara came first. She walked down the porch steps and across the yard and stopped beside Harlan on his left. She crossed her arms. Finn came next. Then Mira. Then Thomas. They arranged themselves behind and to the side without being told, the way people do when they know where they belong. Pip came last. He came at a run and would have kept going past the gate if Harlan had not put a hand on his shoulder. Pip looked up at him, and then at the horses, and then at Rua, and went still. All 7 of them. Harlan at the front, Rua to his right, Dara to his left, the 4 younger children behind. Creel looked at this for a moment. Then he said what he had come to say. He said it louder than last time, which was not the same as saying it more clearly. He had more men with him. He said the matter had progressed and required resolution today. He said it all to Harlan, looking at Harlan, as if the rest of them were not there. Harlan said nothing. Creel kept talking. He said what the county could do. He said what the community expected. He said what this arrangement would eventually force the county to do if it went unaddressed. His voice was level. He was not a man used to being ignored. Harlan said nothing. The silence after Creel stopped was a different kind from the silence before he started. He seemed to notice it. He was looking at Harlan, but there was something in his eyes that had begun, very slightly, to recalculate. Then Dara spoke. "This is our home," she said. "All of us." She said it the way she said most things, plainly and without performance, as if she were stating the address. Creel looked at her. He looked at Harlan. He looked at Rua. He looked at all 7 of them. He was counting. You could see it. The veteran standing still with the kind of quiet that belongs to a man who has been in worse situations and has not moved. The orc beside him, taller than anyone at the gate, completely still. The girl who had just spoken without flinching. The 4 behind her, not hiding, not moving back to the house, just standing there in a line in the morning light. He had come expecting a man alone with children and a problem he could not manage. He had not found that. What crossed his face was not fear, exactly. Not retreat. More like the recognition of ground that had turned out to be different from the map he had been using. He looked at the gate between them. He said the matter was not finished. He said it in a way that was not a concession and not a threat either, just a statement of intent from a man who had revised his timeline. He pulled the horse back. The others followed without being told. Harlan watched them until the road was empty. Rua and the children watched with him. None of them moved until the last horse cleared the bend. Harlan turned back toward the house. Pip fell into step beside him. "Are those men coming back?" Pip said. "I don't know," Harlan said. Pip thought about that. He kept walking. They went inside. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came the way things come on that land, in pieces, grudgingly, with setbacks. A warm week, and then a cold week. Then the ground softening for good, the way it does when it finally decides. The Southfield came in by the middle of the season, better than the year before. The fence held through the one bad storm that came in the late months, which was a real storm and tested the new posts. The roof did not leak. Creel did not come back. The weeks after the standoff had been the waiting kind. But what was being waited for did not arrive. The county sent no word. The road stayed quiet. After a while, the waiting settled into something else, something closer to ordinary. And then it was just the days again. Rua had moved inside. No one had decided this either. The barn had gotten cold, and the house had a back room that was not being used. And one evening, Harlan had said she could take it if she wanted. She moved her things in the next morning. The children had not remarked on it. The chair at the table had become her chair, the way things become anyone's chair, by use, and by nobody moving it. On an ordinary morning in midsummer, Thomas needed help with a rope splice, and could not find Harlan, so he took the rope to Rua. She showed him how it was done. He watched. He came back an hour later with the rope fixed, and his hand smelling of hemp, and said nothing about it except to ask whether that method also worked on thicker rope. She said yes. He went back outside. Mira had taken to doing her reading, near wherever Rua was working in the evenings. She did not ask permission and did not explain it. She just did it. The way you do things when they become natural, and Rua did not object. They sat in the same room, the way 2 people sit in the same room when neither of them needs anything from the other. Dara asked her one morning, directly and without preamble, how deep a fence post had to go in clay soil. Rua told her. Dara wrote the number down and went back to work. Harlan watched all of this from wherever he happened to be standing. He watched it and did not say anything about it, because there was nothing to say that the watching did not already cover. What it was had no name he knew. Not quite a family. The word was too small, or maybe just the wrong shape for what had grown up here. Something that had come out of the work and the land and the time put into both. He did not try to name it. He went back to work. In the evenings when the work was done, they sat near the fire. Not every evening. Often enough that it stopped being notable. Harlan in his chair. Rua at the end of the bench near the window. The children in the various states of children who are not yet asleep. Thomas on the floor with his back against the wall. Mira still reading. Finn already gone upstairs. Pip in the chair he was not supposed to sleep in. The brass button was in his jacket pocket, where it had always been. The carved stone was on the shelf in the back room where Rua had put it, next to the lamp oil and a folded piece of cloth. Neither of those things needed to be taken out. They were just there, the way things are when they have found where they belong. Outside, the road was quiet. The fence ran straight. The field had come in. Most nights that was enough. He was up before first light. Old habit. He pulled on his jacket in the dark and went to the northwest corner of the main room, which he still did most mornings without thinking about it. He pressed his hand to the ceiling board. Dry. Same as yesterday. Same as every morning since Rua nailed the last board into place. He stood there for a moment with his hand on the ceiling. Then he went and started the fire. The house woke the way it always did. Sounds from upstairs, irregular but familiar. Pip announcing something to no one in particular. Thomas landing wrong, getting out of his bunk, which happened most mornings and probably always would. Dara's step on the stair, even and deliberate. Rua was already in the kitchen when he got there. She had the water on. She had taken to rising early, the way he did, and in those quiet minutes before the children came down, the two of them moved through the kitchen without needing to talk about it. He washed his hands. He found a plate. After breakfast, when the children had scattered to their various purposes, he was at the basin, washing the plates, and his thumb found the brass button in his jacket pocket. He held it in his palm. He was not thinking about his years of service, or the morning he had walked away from all of it with this button in his hand and no particular plan. He was thinking about the fence post in the southeast corner that had started to lean, and whether there was enough flour for the week, and whether Pip's coat would last the winter. He was thinking about the ordinary things. He held the button a moment longer. Then he put it back. The grief was still there. It was just smaller than it had been. Or maybe the space around it had gotten larger. The way a room seems larger once you move something out of the middle of it. Not healed, not replaced. More like set down for now, in a place where he did not always reach for it. He dried his hands and went through to the main room. Rua was at the table with a cup. The carved stone from her clan was on the windowsill beside her. She was not looking at it. It was just there, the way things are when they have found a place in a house and stopped being noticed. He took his cup out to the porch. The road was empty this morning. The field was in. The fence ran the length of the east side without a lean. He stood and looked at all of it, the way he looked at it most mornings, before the day asked anything of him. Then he saw it. Far down the road, at the edge of what he could see, something moved. A smear of motion, not yet close enough to resolve into a shape. A figure, maybe, or dust, or just the light doing what light does in the early morning, when it has not yet decided what anything is. He watched it for a moment. He went back inside. But the world beyond the fence had not finished moving. He had come to this piece of ground with a leaking roof and 5 children, and not enough of anything. He had opened a gate one morning for a woman who had nowhere left to go. What had come after was not planned, and not deserved, and not anything he would have been able to describe in advance. It had just accumulated, the way things accumulate when you keep showing up to the same place. That was enough. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much.